Welcome to this new episode of The Disabled Life. The purpose of this podcast is to tell people how I live my life. The name I'm using on the podcast now is The Disabled Guy, because I felt that you needed to hear something as opposed to just my voice there. I'm a disabled male living in Florida with cerebral palsy. I'm here to tell you how I live my life and some of the volunteer work that I do and how I manage to do it with cerebral palsy. Without further ado, let's go into the episode. Okay, let me talk about this here. I am a multicultural Latin person. What I mean by that is, my mom is from Costa Rica and my dad is from Cuba. I'm going to talk here about wordings and words and meanings. In the United States, there are two main words that people use when they're angry, and that are bad words, called F-U and female dog in another context. Okay, that's that. Now let me talk about Costa Rica and Cuba. Excuse me. There's a word that is "don't bother me." In Costa Rica, they use the word no joda. That's a word that means "don't bother me" into Costa Rica. In Cuba, that word is a bad word because it has a sexual connotation to it. So, let me explain. So, as a Latin person with multicultural, there is a thing that you sometimes go to the country where my mom's from, Costa Rica, and then they use that word like we use "don't bother me." In Cuba, they don't like that because that word has a sexual connotation to it, which I don't think it's, to me, it's not a bad word. To me, it's, my mom and I use that word. We don't use it. We don't use it out of respect for the Cuban community, the people in the Cuban community. But what makes it difficult is when we go to Costa Rica, or when I was a young adult, teenager, young adult, we went to Costa Rica. My cousins would use that word, and I'd be like, okay. And it's funny because I would not use it. They would say, why do you use that? That's not a bad word. I said, well, it is from my dad. And so their mom and dad would say to them, my uncles, my uncle and aunt would say, don't use that in front of him because he thinks that's a bad word. So it's hard because you get used to it. And I would always have to think, don't use it. It's something I do out of respect for people. I don't use it. Even though to me it doesn't have the sexual thing, it doesn't bother. To me, it's that word. To me, it's that word. Like I said, Mom and I use it. It's something we've got amongst ourselves, and it's interesting. Let me give you some tips here. One day, my mom has I know a person from another country, and these two countries are Colombia and Cuba. I know a person that they have a word in Colombia as a fruit called papaya. The type of fruit. So she asked a Cuban person, and he goes, and she asked him, okay, get me the papaya. He freaked out because he thought it was a bad word. I remember now what they use for papaya in that country. It's called fruta bomba, bomb fruit. You can guess why that is. Anyway, so it's one of the things where when we have a cultural difference, we have to be careful. Out of respect for the Cuban community, we can't use certain words. And let me explain to you on what happened to me one day when I was in the American Red Cross. I was interesting because I was talking to a girl, one of the staff members, and I wanted to discuss something with her. And I said, when you learn English first and you use it in school all the time, you think in English, but you speak Spanish. So let me explain. The Latin community, it's not the Cubans community this time, it's the Latin community has taken a word, discuss in English, is to talk about something. But in the Latin community has decided that is not to discuss, that is to argue. So the reason I'm talking in this story is because the reason I'm talking is I'm explaining it to you. So this girl come up to me and I wanted to talk to her. I wasn't mad or anything like that. I was just wanting to discuss something with her, which is normal in an environment like that. So I said to her, "Oh, quiero discutir algo contigo." Oh my God! And I said that in Spanish. I said that in English, in Spanish, and she's like, "Oh no." And she's like, "What happened? Oh, what did I do wrong?" I said, "Oh, sorry. No. And then I went to the English word where I said, "Oh," and went to the word. I went to the substitute Spanish word. What happens is when that happens, they have to substitute a word because it'll be confusing and difficult for kids and younger people. It is something that I went through, and it's something I had to deal with. Now it's easier because before I didn't know what the words meant, what the meanings were. Hold on. What the meanings were, and so I had to just follow it. But as I grew up, I realized what the meanings were, and I said, okay, I understand now what they mean, even though I don't think about it that way, but I follow it. I respect with the Cuban community and Cuban people. And if we go on. Oh, as a matter of fact, the OK symbol is the same here, the same as sticking up your middle finger for somebody. In oh God, what's this place? Brazil. So you also have to be careful with symbols that you use, because you don't know what a symbol can do, and you don't want to offend people. Have them complain to you when you don't know what you're talking about. It's something very difficult. It's something, being a multicultural person is hard. Let me tell you, if I was, if my mom was from Cuba, and my dad was from Cuba too, it wouldn't be this difficult because it would be all the same. But when they decide not to do that, because they live. When I go to Costa Rica, I talk like I revert into talking like my cousins and my family and the people I see on the street, which is kind of normal. But I have to think and remember. Let me not do that. Let me, because I don't want to offend any persons. So there we are. Let me take a little pause here, and then I'll continue. In continuation, I want to do a shout out to a special friend of mine, a special podcasting friend of mine. You know who you are when you hear this, but I'm going to thank you, Amity, for all your support in the past years. I met you on Facebook. On Facebook, one of the Facebook groups. So, and I remember I called you to give you a show idea, a topic. You used my topic that I gave you and used it. It was nice to hear it. And from there, it turned into a friendship. Now we talk about family, things like that. We might still talk about podcasting, for example. And we may still talk about podcasting things. Like, for example, I did a promo, and I took your advice and said, I'm not going to do that. I agree with you, distribute music. But I really appreciate your help there, and I do appreciate your honesty, because only podcasters know what we do and how we're doing it and why we're doing it. With that, this is the first one of the year, and thank you, listeners. With you, I would not be here. I would not be here if it wasn't for your listeners. I remember when I got my first 2 listens, and that was something that I felt. I was very nervous about that. I didn't think people would want to listen to me. Now, I have over 1,000. I have over 1,000 listeners, 1,000 plays on my podcast. I appreciate you. Without you, I wouldn't be here. And I'm happy I'm here, because I'm giving a voice to the disabled community. In closing, let me say thank you for listening to this episode of The Disabled Life. You can follow me on the following platforms. You can follow me at Good Pods. You can leave comments, messages there. You can also follow me on Twitter at The Disabled Guy. And you can also listen to me on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and many others. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll also give you my email. My email is Kilo Echo 4 Kilo Echo Yankee, or KE4KEY@gmail.com. Once again, thank you, and thank you for your support, and I'll see you next week. In closing, let me say also, you can also follow me and leave me star ratings on Spotify, and you can also leave a 5-star. I'm not saying a 5-star rating, whatever you wish. On Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, you can only leave one time per listener. If you go on Good Pods, you can leave comments there on each episode. With that, thank you, and I'll see you. You'll hear from me on Saturday. This is a Wednesday episode. This is